Hi, I'm Maggie. Welcome to Experiments in Crafting. Tonight I've got a few things to share with you. I have a Leither Co. to unbox, a Leither Co. box to unbox. And then I am working on Amigurumi project that I haven't worked on one probably since I started live streaming. So I was going to share that with you guys. And then throughout the last few chats, a lot of people have been asking about this yarn or that yarn or comparing a yarn to another yarn. And so there's yarn from Hobby, which is Hobbii. I think they're in Denmark. There's a website called Hobbyum, which is a different website, and I didn't actually realize that as we've been chatting, that they're two separate entities. And then there is Ice Yarns and woolwarehouse.co.uk. So they all have various different yarns that they carry. And so what I'd like to do is I'm going to pull my laptop up and kind of go through them and see what you guys are most interested in seeing. And we'll get some of those and unbox them and maybe do some more in-depth reviews on those. So, one of the challenges, and I'll get more into it, but one of the challenges that I was facing was I found a lot of yarns that were interesting, but I felt like they had really, really close US equivalents that I didn't necessarily feel like I had to order them, for me personally. So I'm curious to know what you guys think and what you guys want to see. And so we'll do some internet shopping together later. So getting into my project update. So, I picked this up. It was in the Valentine's section of Walmart. I got 3 of these little mermaids. And if you follow me on Instagram or Facebook, you've probably already seen this. But I got this little mermaid, and it's interesting because it doesn't. The tail of the mermaid is not filled, and so it terminates in a flat bottom, and so the mermaids can sit on a shelf. If I put it on this box, you can see the little tail drapes over. And they look pretty cool on the edge of a shelf. And I looked all through just all of the amigurumi patterns, and nothing really was exactly like this. And I thought this was a really cool crochet idea because you could easily turn this sort of into a blanket. And sort of half amigurumi, half blanky. So, I decided to start working on this, and one of the challenges that I find, regardless of skin tone, it's really difficult to find good colors that are good skin options. It's just really, really tricky. For a Caucasian skin tone, it's hard to find. You get ivory or white, or then you get into pink. And so it's really tricky to find a flesh tone. I don't really know what you want to call it, but they're hard to find. But I went to a local yarn store and I got a skein of Simplicity. Get all of my stuff out of here. So I got a skein of Simplicity, and the color on this yarn is actually called, oh, it doesn't actually have it on here. It's called Karen's Birthday Suit. So it's literally supposed to be a skin tone for actually a specific person. Karen Skasel, I guess, is either a founder or, this is from Skasel Knitting. So, it's literally supposed to be a match for her skin tone. So, that's what I bought, and it looked really, really pink in the store. And now that it's out and right next to this, it's a really good color option. So, right now the amigurumi that I've got sort of looks like a space alien. Because this is as far as I've gotten. I did start on the hair. The hair is a I'm not exactly sure how to say that, like Serdar. I've seen this yarn before, but this is a DK weight cotton called Happy, and it comes in these little bitty 20-gram balls. They were like $1.50 or something like that. And so I got 2 in what I thought might be a skin tone. This was what this company recommended. It's a little bit tanner, um, but still probably would have worked. However, the 20-gram balls I thought were going to go further, and they just didn't go quite as far as I needed them to. So this portion I've been sort of freehanding and just working a basic ball shape. After you've worked enough amigurumi, you sort of get a feel for, you start with 6 and then you go to 12 and then 18 and then to 24. And so you sort of learn like the general increase pattern up to however big you want to go. And then you work several rows all of the same size, and then you start decreasing. And then I started looking at other patterns and seeing what elements I liked out of other patterns. And so one of the things that I learned, and I wish that I would have thought through, but almost all of the doll patterns are worked feet up. And that is because you can start with the feet and then join them and make, so you can start with the feet and then you like stitch around, and you can start the torso and you can work up, and then you can work the arms on and come down into a neck shape and then out for the head. And you can work basically from feet all the way up without having to sew. So what's going to happen here is, because I worked from the top down, I couldn't really attach the arms in line. And so I will have to sew the arms on, which is fine. And that's a way that a lot of amigurumi are made. But a lot of dolls, I noticed specifically, are worked feet up so that you don't have to do that. This will probably look more floppy and less human, I guess. It'll look more like a rag doll. Like this doll's arms are kind of floppy down by its side, and so it'll probably look more like this doll and less like a character. Yeah, so the other problem that I ran into is that this doll has a little bit of a bumpy skin condition. So because I worked top down, all of my decreases are being shown here, and I think you can probably see that on camera. Where I've got these bumps. Yeah, we can zoom in a little bit more. This side looks worse to me, but I don't know if they show up any better. So you can see that there's like some general unevenness along here. And real quick, I'm just going to say hi to everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining me. And just hi. And thanks for commenting. Is it a ragdoll design? It's sort of going to be something kind of in between. So it's going to be definitely like amigurumi to like the waist. And then it's weighted a little bit, sort of like a Beanie Baby. But then the end is ragdoll style. And so I'm kind of trying to replicate this doll, but not its like exact details. So I'm not going for exactly the same hair, but sort of the general design there. But this needs to be, I don't know, maybe 3 inches taller, and then I'll finish it off. I'm thinking rather than decreasing on here, I'm probably going to make a disc and sew it on so that I can sew in a pouch of beads, like weighted beads. If I had worked bottom up, I could have filled the bottom, and then I wouldn't have to worry about it. But I have to figure out how I'm going to get the beads to stay in while I sew it down. And I think the best idea I've come up with is a disc and then sew it. I'll probably just put the beads in an old stocking. I've done that a lot before. You can actually use that as a trick too. If you make something dark, you can put all of your stuffing into like nylons, and it's dark, and it'll keep the white stuffing from showing through your stitches, and so it doesn't look like black and white speckled. It's black, and then the nylon will sort of back it. So you can still fill it, but it's not poking through the holes. Karen's asking if I have any tutorials on amigurumi. I do not. I could start some, and actually I made notes on all of the things that I did with this, like, base pattern here. Though like I said, I probably would change some things. So I could try and do some tutorials. The YouTube channel that most people recommend when you're starting out is Planet June. And I think she has both a blog and a YouTube channel. And that's, I think, probably where I learned most of the things that I know how to do amigurumi-wise is from that channel. But basically, if you can work in the round, you can do amigurumi. You just, like, the key is that you just have to work with really tight stitches. So on a yarn that calls for a 3mm crochet hook, you work with a 1.5 or a 2mm crochet hook, and you make really tight stitches, because otherwise just everything shows through. So this is a DK weight. I did this with a 3.25mm crochet hook, and that's how you get such a tight fabric that, like, holds its shape. It has no drape, and it mostly would stand on its own. Like, it's sufficiently strong to stand without stuffing. Which is not at all what you would want for a like a cowl or something. Like, you wouldn't want to make fingerless gloves like that, but you want to make amigurumi. So it's really a different mindset. You're not trying to make fabric that drapes and looks nice. You're trying to make something rigid. And so to do that, you really have to work with tight tension and a smaller crochet hook than you normally would. But so there's my start to my amigurumi. And then I did work the hair off of a pattern. And there are some things that I changed about the pattern, but the general idea was off of a pattern. And when we go to the computer, I can show you which pattern it was. But this is basically a wig. So it said you can sew or glue it on. But it's got little bangs here on the front, and then you work some rounds with these curls. So you flip all the bangs down on to the front here, and you could actually go through and wet these and pin each one down to the head so that they, like, sort of iron on there. Because they're curling up pretty good right now. Or just fabric glue them directly on and get them all to lay down. So that's mostly what they were recommending, was running a bead of fabric glue, placing it, and then pinning it down. And then that way they stay exactly the way you want forever. They also had all of the, basically what are curls here, all pulled straight on the amigurumi that this pattern is from, but I kind of like them curled. It looks a little bit dumb with this giant circle in the center, but there is a second piece, and I ran out of yarn before I could finish it, but if I fold this in half, you get the general effect. So there will be 2 strips that go across the top here, and 1 give a second layer of hair, and 2 cover that bald spot. So you get some kind of, like, depth to the hair because there's 2 different layers of curls. And then, like I said, it covers that spot on the top. So yeah, that's the start right there. I have not decided at all what I'm going to do for the tail. I don't know what yarn I'm going to use yet. I don't know what kind of pattern. I was thinking maybe dragon scales and then trying to modify them so that they were more mermaid-like. So the dragon scales usually come to, like, a real sharp V, but mermaid scales are usually more rounded. Like, These ones here, you can see, are more swoopy, and the dragon scales are more V-shaped. So I might see if I can modify like a standard crochet dragon scale to be a little bit more swoopy. So okay. Karen's saying that she'd love to see some tutorials, maybe a giraffe. I've actually made a couple of giraffes off of different patterns, and so I could maybe come up with something on my own.
Probably could do those Junimos. Those were easy, right? That you made.
Oh
You made one
yeah,
without a pattern.
yeah. So my husband was saying I made Junimos, which are a little like round alien from a video game called Stardew Valley. And so those are basically just a ball shape, with whatever detailing you want to put on there. Learning to do a basic ball, though, is useful because it's sort of the basis of every shape. Like, if you think about it, a head is just a ball. A body, like a torso, is really the same thing, but you just do a lot more in the middle and then decrease. Like, you can make sort of every body piece out of just tubes and balls. Like you just make it more oval as you want to make an arm or a leg, and that gets you sort of the basic shape for making anything.
What about the lobster too? Did you do that on your own?
No, the lobster was from a pattern. He was trying to remember what things that I made on my own. A lot of times I will follow a pattern to a point and then like make modifications. Um, like I needed a pattern for Hiccup from How to Train Your Dragon. And so I followed a pattern for like a basic human body and then did the detailing that I wanted to do, but then I also had to modify, for those of you who've seen the movie, he has a prosthetic leg, and so I had to come up with just like a shape that generally resembled that. Um and but then I made a toothless from a pattern. So all right, let's see. What yarn style is it? Um so they're both DK weight yarns. This is the body yarn is 55% merino superwash, 28% acrylic, 17% nylon. And it is Simplicity by Haiku, which is a Skasel yarn. And then this is Happy, which is a cotton yarn. And it is also DK weight. So, or number 3, basically. And so I actually really wanted cotton for the body, and then found this and actually really ended up liking it. Most of the patterns that I really liked, all of the doll patterns that I found were all made of cotton. And I don't know if that's just because it has a cleaner surface look to it. Mercerized cotton in particular has a really smooth surface like texture. Where wool has like there's some hair on here that I don't know necessarily if you want to see. So this wig is really, really like hair free or halo free. So that might be the appeal. The other thing is mercerized cotton, like as far as colors, comes in just limitless colors. And so you can really be precise about, oh, I want this shade of teal or I want that shade of the whatever. We're finding a line of yarn. If you want to use all the same yarn, which is generally a good idea when you're working with amigurumi, it's generally a pretty good idea to try and use certainly the same weight of yarn, but if you can, the same brand of yarn, because one company's DK is slightly different than another company's. And so if you use one for, say, like if you're working a doll and it has socks sort of like built into it, so the bottom portion of the feet are like white sweat socks, and then you move on to whatever color you're going to use for the skin tone, you can end up with sort of a different gauge from the socks to the legs, and so you can end up with some weird things happening. I had this happen. I made a striped zebra. It looked like the zebra stripe gum. It was like a rainbow zebra from I think 1 and 2 Crochet was the name of the pattern designer. And I used a whole bunch of yarn, all like from the same brand. I think it was all Red Heart acrylic. And then I used like 2 other colors. Like I had 5 of my colors all from one brand and 2 of a different brand. I think they were Hobby Lobby something. And they were just a little bit off, and the stripes were like noticeably, at least to me, just a little bit like holier because the hook I was using was too big at that point because the yarn was just a little bit too fine. Let's see. What cotton do I like? I'm still figuring that out. So I've not been a huge fan of working with cotton, but at least for amigurumi it works really well. And mostly the issue that I have with cotton is not anything to do with cotton itself. It's when you work with cotton, it doesn't have as much give or stretch like wool does. And so when you work with it, it can really be very different. But when you're making amigurumi, you're working in such a different way anyway, and not having that give is almost a good thing. It makes a little bit more rigid project. It makes it a little bit easier to see your stitches. So far, the cotton with the most colors that I've worked with and that I've liked everything that I've made out of is the sheep's katana. And I had a color pack, but it got damaged in the flood that we had. But you can get it, I think, in like 150 colors, and literally you can get it in whatever shade of whatever color you want. And so that's worked very well. The biggest problem that I have with that yarn is that I can't get it domestically. So I have to order it from the UK and get it imported here, which takes about a week or so. And I've said this before in other live streams, Wool Warehouse is shockingly cheap for shipping and shockingly fast, at least from the UK to the US. I think their like standard shipping is inside a week and it's $4.99, and then their express shipping I think was $10, and I think it was here in 2 business days. It was, like I said, crazy fast. And really $10 shipping for international shipping, with like a 2 or 3 day business turnaround, 2 or 3 business day turnaround, is really pretty unbeatable. So, I'm sure that shipping is higher if you're in Canada. Hook size. So I've been using a 2.25 millimeter, which is a B hook, or a 2.75, depending on what I'm doing. So like for the hair, I used a 2.75 because I wanted it a little bit bigger. And the stitches didn't have to be quite so tight. The body, I used a 2.25, and that's with a DK weight yarn. If I was using worsted weight yarn, I would probably use an E hook, which is a 3.5. And both of those would be fine. You just end up with a larger doll. So if you can work any amigurumi pattern with any yarn, and an appropriately sized hook, but you just are going to get bigger or smaller things for the most part. You might have a little bit of issue with like clothes fitting if you scale up or down, but for the most part, if you just use a bigger hook and you use a bigger yarn, you're just going to end up with a bigger doll. So it would probably be like this tall with the same, with a worsted weight yarn and a 3.5 millimeter hook. This exact amount of rows would just leave you with a doll this big and a head slightly larger. So, Patricia joining us, saying hello. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. We're just going over an amigurumi that I'm working on, and I think we're about done there. Because I ran out of yarn and I'd bought the yarn at a local yarn store, they were actually open today, but I did not make it there. But I had to wait till they were open again. They're closed Sunday and Monday. So I actually started on another doll and I made it like, I don't know, 8 or 9 rows into a foot. And that was as far as I got last night before I was too tired to keep going. So, there's not really much to show you. It's literally a single foot. So, but that's where I'm at. I just started on another one. I didn't like this color as much. Like I said, skin tones are hard to find. And I think that's true of all, like, regardless of what tone you're trying to match, it's hard to match human skin tone in yarn. So, I was trying to find a Caucasian type of a skin tone, and this is gonna be pretty yellow, and very, very pale. So, I don't know. Maybe I'll keep going with this, or maybe I'll just give up with the little foot and get more of the yarn that I actually like the color of. But, all right. So that's really all I've been working on as far as projects for myself and whatnot. And so the next thing that I've got is this Leither Co box to open up. Yeah, if anyone's got any questions about yarn or amigurumi or crochet in general, you can throw those in the live chat, and we can talk about those. We're gonna move over to my computer after we open the Leither Co box, and then look around at some yarns that people have been asking for in the last couple live streams. So we're gonna take a look at that. So if there's a website you'd like to like a yarn store website that or a company that you want me to look around for, throw those in the live chat. If you're enjoying the video, it does help us out if you hit like earlier on in the video rather than at the very end. It shows it to more people on like the homepage of their YouTube. So if you're enjoying the video and you feel like hitting like, we'd appreciate it. All right. So this came, I forgot it was coming, and it came in the mail like today, and I have not even opened it. It does, so I'm holding it this way. So we're gonna see what's in here. All right. So this is different. This is a bulky weight yarn in a really pretty, like, pinky, a little bit of purple on the edges here. This is called Dream. It's bulky weight. It's 100% superwash merino. It's 106 yards and 100 grams. So it's got a really pretty, like, purple end over there. There's some purple in here. And then the rest is all different pinks. Even where it's really, really light, like right here, there's like a little bit of a pink tone. I think that blows out a little bit when I tip it that way. But yeah, you don't see a lot of, my husband's saying it's weird to see a hand-dyed yarn this thick, and you don't see a lot of bulky hand-dyed. Certainly here and there, but the vast majority of hand-dyed yarn seems to be fingering or DK weight. A bit of worsted as well, but very rarely is bulky weight. All right. What's that? Yeah. So this is a Dream is a Wish collection, and it's got a Cinderella castle on the front. It looks like they have gone to a pattern book. And I'm going to try, I can show this side. So one of the projects that they are including in here is a wine cozy. So making basically like a wine bag or like a gift bag for a bottle. So that's one of the pattern options. And then on this side is the full pattern, which I'm not going to show. Or I'm at least going to do my best not to, but I'm pretty bad at messing that up. And then this is a like a headband. It's called a Dream Wrap. And it looks like there's probably enough yarn to do both patterns. So usually headbands like this take up pretty little yarn. And then one of the interesting things here is that in the front of the book is all of the different options that you could have gotten with the different boxes. So Leither Co. offered, they offered a non-wool version of the box this month. And then there were options that, so I always get the natural hooks, which are wooden. There's also a funfetti version, which is a like multi-tone. It looks like this month there was a blue and pink and like a black and pink. You can see in this box here. And you might not be able to see real clearly, but we can zoom in a little bit tighter and show a little bit clearer. I'm not sponsored by Leither Co. I really just like getting yarn and this sort of surprise. So I have no vested interest in you guys signing up or doing anything, but I just like to unbox these. I just think they're fun. So you could get yarn only, and it looks like there's the wool option and there's the cotton option. And then, oh, we haven't gotten to the stitch marker yet. So there's a stitch marker in here. And then they offered a funfetti hook, a natural hook, or this month you could also just get a clover hook in a package with no wooden handle. That was a little bit cheaper. And then there's the pattern options down here. So I will open up the hook and let you guys see that. So it's nicely wrapped in paper. Normally the whole box is wrapped in paper. I kind of feel like I like this presentation a little bit better. I don't know why, but mostly because I think I would open it and then sometimes wrap them back up and show you guys. So the hook box changed. That's new this time. So it's a really bright, like Tiffany blue box. And inside, so normally it was just a white box, but this time they've gotten like personalized boxes. And then this is a 6mm crochet hook, which makes that a J hook. And a really beautiful, I think the natural wood is prettier, like in like my opinion, but the funfetti ones are fun. They're just, I like the natural wood. And I mentioned the last time I unboxed one of these that they switched from a like generic metal hook in here to a clover hook set in here. And so these are like the special slippery coated clover hooks. That whole amigurumi that I made, the mermaid, like the start to it, I used the 2.25 Leither Co. hook for the whole thing, and it worked beautifully. It was nice to have like the extra bulk here to grip onto as you're making like teeny tiny tight stitches. I find when I make amigurumi that like back here on my hand, because I'm holding on to a really small hook, because a 2.25mm hook, the front where you like hold the finger pad is about the same as all the other hooks. But the back end gets really narrow and skinny, and then your finger is like wrapped real tight, and I get cramps through my pinky and my ring finger. So it was nice to have the extra bulk of these wooden hooks, where like back here, your pinky finger can't get as tight on the hook. So that is the hook and the yarn and the pattern book, and then there is also a stitch marker, and it is a teeny tiny little Cinderella carriage, and it's pretty adorable. We're going to try and zoom in on it if the camera will cooperate. You need it lower? Sorry. So, there, it's a little Cinderella coach. Huh? No, it's, well, it's like a pumpkin style coach, like for Cinderella. It's pink. But it's just like a little carriage. So, it's pretty cute. So, that is my Leither Co. box, and those are, they went up a little bit. I think they're on the order of like $45 for the whole set, which is a pretty nice deal for 100 grams of hand-dyed yarn, 2 patterns, hand-turned hook, plus its clover base, and a stitch marker and shipping. So I think $45 is about right for those. But yeah, I've really enjoyed getting the boxes. And I just think it's fun to get the hooks. I've actually worked with the hooks quite a bit now, and they've been pretty nice. I didn't do much. So they had all wooden hooks when I first subscribed, and then they switched to metal hooks in a wooden handle, and then they switched to clover metal hooks in a handle. And I've got quite a bit of usage now on, I think I've got 5 total, including this one, clover hooks with the handles, and they're really nice to work with. So let's go back to comments. Helen, let's see. The skin tone yarn that I purchased, is there a way to get it through the mail? Yeah, so Simplicity yarn is pretty easy to come by. I would check, if you don't have a local yarn store, then probably yarn.com has it. That's sort of my like default recommendation, though I don't actually know that I've ever ordered from yarn.com. But it's Simplicity by Haiku, and it's Hikoo. Which is owned by Skasel Knitting. So you should be able to get it pretty much worldwide. And it was color 41041. And I think it was called Karen's birthday suit. It was Karin's birthday suit. But that should be readily available online. It was a wool acrylic nylon blend. Yeah, wool acrylic nylon blend. In about a $8 per 50 grams price range. As far as a cotton version, my top choice is still the sheep's katana, and that has to be imported. The one that I'm going to be ordering is called Petal Peach, or Peach Petal. It's a very pale sort of ivory color with like pinky peach undertones, which makes it a pretty good match for like my skin tone, which has a lot of pink undertone in it. And then Tracy is asking why are hand-dyed yarns usually lighter weights. I don't really know if there's a specific reason. Mostly because I see people making like knit shawls or crocheted shawls out of them, and generally you want lighter weights for those. A lot of people will knit socks out of hand-dyed yarn. But I guess probably the real answer is that people make sort of fine garments out of hand-dyed yarns. So it's going to be fingerless gloves, socks, shawls, maybe a nice hat, something like that. And those all tend to be lightweight projects. The other answer might be that it's just hard to get bulky weight yarns to either dye evenly, or they suck up too much dye, or they're hard to work with. Like I don't have any experience in dyeing, but there might be a logistical reason that it's just harder to work with bulky weight yarns. It might also be a supply issue. Like there might not be a vendor who sells a good bare bulky weight yarn. This one feels very nice, and I think will work very nicely, but there might be just a lot more suppliers of fingering weight yarn than there are of bulky weight. So I don't totally know what the real reason is, but that does generally seem to be the trend, that it's very easy to get fingering or sock weight. It's pretty easy to get DK and worsted, and it's just a whole lot less common to see bulky weights and heavier in hand-dyed. And in a market where yarn costs a lot more, you sort of have, I imagine you sort of have to deal with what the demand is. Yeah. Um, so like if people are demanding fingering weight and that's all they're buying, you're not going to make a whole bunch of bulky weight because there's no demand for it. And I think the margins on being an indie dyer are probably pretty tight. So you just have to go with what's in demand. So was it last week that we unboxed Premiere? I think last week we unboxed Premiere. It might have been 2 weeks ago. I think it was last week. I think 2 weeks ago was Lion Brand. But we got a yarn in called Nordica. Nordica is a new yarn from Premiere. It's a DK weight yarn. And it makes, so when you work it up, it's self-patterning. And it makes this striped pattern as you work it up. And you can see there's kind of a Nordic themed like pattern that it develops when you knit it. So I don't knit, but we do have a couple of machine knitters at home. A 22 needle and a 48 needle, I think. And so they make roughly a like teen-sized hat and a like a baby hat. And so we used the larger one and we worked up Nordica. And by we, I mostly just mean my husband, and then I sewed it when we got to the end. And it works up pretty well, honestly. And realistically, it looks way better on camera. It looks nice in person, but it's really showing up very strongly on camera. So you can see there's the Nordic pattern. And if I flip it inside out, so this was originally a tube. For those of you who haven't machine knit, you basically just knit a tube and then you draw both ends together and turn it. So you end up with a double-ended tube, and you push this side in and tuck it in, sort of like folding a fitted bed sheet. And then you just sew the corners or sew the ends together. And you've got a hat, and then you can just turn a cuff into the end of it. So that was just a really quick way. I don't know, it took probably 15 minutes to make the hat, with my husband turning the thing like crazy. But it's a really good way to see how things work up. I don't know. Machine knitting seems to get sort of a bad reputation on the internet, but it's really, really useful to just see how a yarn works up. And you can learn a lot about a yarn if it's real tangly or if it's got issues really, really quickly. And then just see how the patterning works out. So it's very informative. Even if it's not it doesn't really take much technical expertise to run, but it gives me a lot of information, even just watching him twirl the thing around and handling the yarn a little bit. So, for example, we did learn that this yarn is, even though we didn't really have any trouble knitting with it, it was very splitty at the end when we were picking up stitches to sew the ends together. And on another hat, we learned that you could pull on it because it's a single ply yarn and it just sort of fell apart. So you still learn quite a bit just making a real quick sample like that. All right. So if there are any more questions, keep throwing them in the live stream and I'll keep reading them. I am going to turn on my computer. And like I said, one of the things that people have been asking for recently are some of these yarns from overseas, from where I'm at. So in this case, the UK, and Denmark, and I don't remember where Hobby is out of. Maybe Turkey. I didn't actually look. I think the yarns are Turkish. So I've got the Hobby website open, and I'll talk you through a little bit on my reasoning for opening these up, and then show you around a little bit on what I was looking at on here. Sorry, I have the hiccups. But so I came to Hobby. Hobby is Hobbii. And there's a number of yarns on here that were recommended. So when we were showing the Dazzling yarn from Hobby Lobby in the US, somebody said it looks just like Moonlight from Hobby, and then recommended that we get this yarn. But I guess my interest from those who have used it, or my curiosity from those who haven't, is whether this is interesting or whether it just looks pretty much like Dazzling, and we can sort of make the same assumptions about it. As I was going through this website, I sort of was looking, and it's like, oh, well, here's Cookie. It looks exactly like Red Heart Roll With It Melange. And here's Universe. Well, it looks pretty much like, what, I can't think of what yarn this one looks like, but Moonlight looks just like Dazzling. And, oh, this Twister yarn here is a dead ringer for one of those ones that I got at Hobby Lobby. I don't remember. Huh? Not Sugar Wheel, it's the other one. There's 2 cotton gradient yarns right now at Hobby Lobby. We could open up Hobby Lobby's website. Go. Not that. No, it's a plied yarn. We're gonna find it real quick. It's like a fingering weight yarn. It's definitely Yarn B. It's called like Twisty something. I think it's a 50-50 blend. Fiber. 50% acrylic, 50% cotton. Nope. Well, I don't remember what it's called. I could probably dig it out, but it's a lightweight yarn. It might be lace or fingering weight yarn. Maybe somebody knows what it's called up. There it is. Rhapsody. Rainbow Rhapsody. So if you look at these Rainbow Rhapsody colors, they're just dead on the same thing as these Twister colors. Like, we probably could find even the same. There's that yarn, and there's that yarn. And, like, yeah, one's gray in the center, and one, like, if I work a little harder, maybe I'll find the one with the gray center. There. Like, they're just almost exactly the same thing. And so I'm happy to buy yarns to open and look at, but, like, for me personally, when I was looking at this, it was like, well, I can just go to Hobby Lobby and get basically the same thing. So what I wanted to do was ask you guys, what are you dying to see? What have you not been able to see yarn reviews of? Is there something that you've been really interested in, and just would really like to see one ball of this ordered or one ball of that ordered? And so I thought I would pull up my laptop and kind of look around with all of you guys in live chat and have you guys tell me what you're interested in seeing. So if you're really, really interested in me doing a comparison video between this Hobby Twister and the Hobby Lobby version, like, that's good for me to know. But I guess I need some of your help in deciding, because I was pretty indecisive. All of the stuff from Hobby looked really nice, but nothing was jumping off the page to me because it felt like there were US versions that I could get with a lot less trouble. If that, hopefully that makes sense. So, okay, pop back up to questions here. Bridget wants to make a scarf, trying out the Celtic stitch. Will Lion Brand thick and quick be too thick of yarn for making that scarf? If what? I'm not familiar with a Celtic stitch. Let me pull it up since I have my laptop today. Oh, okay. So like a basket weave. Well, a crisscrossy weave. Okay, I'm with you. Lion Brand Thick and Quick is going to be on the heavy side for that. And if you really want to use Lion Brand Thick and Quick, I would go up a couple of hook sizes. So, let's what?
You have a thick and quick thing over there.
Yeah, I've got a couple of Thick and Quick things to show here. So, here and here. So this is a Thick and Quick mandala scarf, and I've shown this a couple of times, but it has no flex to it. Like, I mean, yeah, it moves, but it can, like, I think I've worked it too many times. When I used to show this, it would just stand up on its own. But, like, it's very rigid. And it can basically stand up by on its own backbone. And so this, I used the hook that they recommended, and I probably would have gone up at least one, maybe two hook sizes to get some, like, drape in this fabric. This is a Thick and Quick scarf that I made with a pretty thick stitch pattern, and it has lots more drape. And I went up, I don't actually remember off the top of my head, but I went up at least a hook size. So if you're going to use a Celtic weave stitch, I would definitely recommend going up at least a hook size, if not more. I know a lot of people don't like to swatch, meaning like make an actual fabric swatch and like see how it works out. But in this case, I would probably recommend making like a fabric sample of, even if you can like do it as part of the scarf, but know that you might rip it out. And just get a feel for how it moves around, because there's nothing really worse than a scarf that's like rigid and like a neck brace. Even if you're talking a long scarf, like when you go to wrap it, you don't want it like standing up and like not moving when your head moves. A real drapey, like plush scarf is what you want. And so you can absolutely do that with Thick and Quick, and with that stitch pattern, you just have to give yourself enough flexibility. And that particular stitch pattern is sort of a like crisscrossy type of a pattern. And so it's actually going to make the problem worse. It's going to make a heavy yarn feel even stiffer. So you're going to probably want to go even bigger. So if they recommend like a 6mm, I'd be looking at going to an 8 or 9mm hook and seeing what kind of drape you get there. Because I don't even think at like an 8 or 9mm you're going to end up with like holes at all. So I would try that out and go like 2 to 3mm bigger. And see how that works for you. Otherwise, for a Celtic stitch like that, I generally would go with a smoother worsted weight yarn personally. And that's really because that Celtic stitch, you have to do a lot of post stitches. And so you've got when you work a stitch like that, you skip stitches and you work ahead, and then you have to go back and work back into the skipped stitches. And so you spend a lot of time hunting for the tops of stitches. And Lion Brand Thick and Quick is a pretty fluffy yarn, and so finding those stitches could be a challenge, which is why I recommended a pretty smooth, just like normal weight yarn, because it'll just be easier to see your stitches. I probably would recommend a like medium to light color over changing yarns. So if your choices are a light gray or a pink or something like that, Thick and Quick, versus a black yarn of worsted, I definitely would go with Thick and Quick in that case. So you're looking for something that might make it a little easier to find your stitches, and that can either be a light colored yarn or sort of a medium colored but not a real dark yarn, or a sort of smooth, thinner weight. I guess are my recommendations there. Let's see. Tracy's saying she's doing a puff stitch blanket with magic light, which seems to be a basic reliable acrylic. And she's looking for some reviews of Ice Yarns to see how they work up. Okay, so we can pull up Ice Yarn's website. And then I'm what's an 8/8 cotton? And then Bridget just thanking me for the recommendation. So cotton comes in 8/8 or 8/4. I think it's a yarn weight and then a ply. They're very European. So if you look here, if we switch back to the website, you can see the Hobby Rainbow yarn comes in an 8/8, an 8/6, and then I have 8/4 open. So there's 8/4. I think they're weights of yarn in there and then plies thereof, if that makes sense. So let me try and explain that one more time. So you have a single strand in there, and in the case of this yarn, I'm pretty sure it's 4-plied. So it's an 8-weight yarn, 4-plied. And that gets you to a fingering or sock weight yarn. A 8/6 yarn is a sport weight yarn, so it's slightly heavier with slightly more plies, and you can actually see those plies in this picture. Like, you can see the spin on here. And then in the case of an 8/8 yarn, it's the same deal. It's just more plies, and it's probably a worsted weight. It's a DK weight.
That first number works like wire gauge, so the higher it goes, the smaller it is.
Exactly like cotton weight. So yeah. So if I was guessing, these are probably in English cotton measurement. So these are probably an 8 single, 8-plied in this case. It's a part of my job, like my everyday job, to understand cotton weights. They're a disaster as far as a unit. They're nonsensical, but the important thing there to know is that, like my husband said, and I don't know that you guys could hear him, that it works like wire gauge. So as the number gets smaller, the cotton gets fatter. So like each individual, so the front 8. So if this is an 8/8 cotton, which is basically a DK weight, but if it was a 12/8 cotton, it would be thinner overall. So each ply would be finer, and there would still be 8 of them. So the top number is the size of each ply, and the bottom number is how many plies there are. So in this case, what they're telling you is an 8/4, an 8/6, and an 8/8 all have the same individual plies. Like if you picked them apart, you would end up with 8 yarns of the same size, 6 yarns of the same size, and 4 yarns of the same size. And if you mixed them all up, you wouldn't be able to tell which plies came from which yarn. They would all be the same as each other. It's just how many went into each yarn. That probably allows them to offer a wide range of sizes just by, like, they can offer 100 colors and they just ply as many as they want, and then they can sell it as an 8/4, an 8/6, an 8/8, an 8/10, like whatever they want to sell, without having to dye new yarns. So they can just offer 100 colors, and you can see there's just a ton of colors. It's literally 101 colors, it looks like, that they offer, assuming that there's no skips in here, which I did not check for. But they offer 101 colors, but they can offer that in every single line here. Yeah, they're all offered in 101 colors because they didn't have to change anything at the yarn level. they can just ply them up. And I don't know that that's exactly how they do it. They probably dye the yarn already plied, if I was guessing. But for some reason, 8/6 is only offered in a small subset of those colors. Probably because it's not very popular, if I was guessing. Sport weight yarn is not as popular. You just don't see very much sport weight around. But anyway, that's what those mean. So, in the US, we tend to use a standard weight like number, so 0 through 7, or a word to describe it. So, sock weight, fingering weight, DK, worsted. We use like words to describe yarn weights. In the UK, they tend to call things by plies. So, yeah, there's the yarn weight scale that we've used in other videos. But in the UK, I've noticed that they tend to call things by plies. And so somebody will say a 3-ply or a 4-ply or an 8-ply. And those don't really mean that they have 8 plies. That's their common word. So, like, where we say worsted, they say 8-ply. And it might not actually have 8 plies. It could be a single ply yarn, but it's an 8-ply weight. And so I don't know what the better system is, but there are differences. So if you're going to order yarn from outside of your own country, I guess you should be aware that there are different words that people call different yarns. So anyway, going back to, so I guess ice yarns has been the biggest topic. Looks like they kept my cart after all this time, which is nice. No, I don't think I created an account. So these are some of the ice yarns. This is just their new yarns on their homepage here. Fur pom-poms. So ice yarns is a weird place to buy from. So it looks like you can buy these individually. Though it says 1 pack 1 item, but then they're labeled as 2 faux fur so I don't know, whatever. Anyway, they've got a whole bunch of pom-poms, so I'm probably gonna order some pom-poms too. But let's go into this cotton linen superfine yarn. So here's the tricky thing about ice yarns and why I haven't like pulled the trigger on ordering yet is, so you've got these yarns down here and they're like, oh, they're 99 cents, but you have to buy them in like the packs that you would buy if you owned a yarn store. So it's still a good deal. Like $7.99 is not even a bad price for yarn. And then the fact that you're going to get 8 of them is a great deal. But I don't know if I want 8. And I don't know if I want 8 in one color, and so then I sort of balk at it a little bit, and I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna order that. So like here, I have to, instead of normally what I would do is buy like 1 or 2 of a yarn in 1 or 2 colors, and that's usually what I buy if I'm gonna buy a review quantity. So I'll get 2 balls of one color, 2 balls of another color. I'll make a project out of one of the colors, and then I'll have the other color to sort of have as part of the review.
It's much more useful for us to have all the colors than to have a lot of.
Right, yeah. So what my husband's saying is it's much more useful for us as far as doing video reviews to have all of the colors than it is to have a lot of one color. Just because it's a lot less interesting to show you guys on a video what 8 balls of the same color look like. But it's more interesting to look at all of the colors of a particular line of yarn. So, I guess what I'm saying here is part of the reason I haven't bought this is just because of the way they sell yarn. They sort of sell it wholesale. And you have to buy the whole package. But it's kind of hard to just not buy everything also, because like these yarns, as like they're starting at $1.99 a package, as cheap as a quarter a skein. So here's Magic Baby. It's a just bare bones workhorse type of cotton yarn here, or acrylic yarn. I don't see any that are actually a quarter.
Is that possibly in the same line that Tracy mentioned? Because she mentioned working.
Yeah, I think she said Magic Light, and so Magic Baby is probably just baby color version. But even at $1.75, so $6.99 a pack, you get 4 of them. Like, that's hard to walk away from. And like, even at $6.99 per ball, I probably, like, at Joann Fabric would probably buy like 3 colors. But then I don't know if I want 3 bags of yarn, like. So that's where I've gotten into a little bit of a corner here. This is actually a really pretty color, the neon pink. Yeah. So I would love your guys' feedback. It's helpful. Somebody mentioned that they just worked up some Magic Light. So we're looking at Magic Baby here. And would like to see some of their yarns worked up. The other thing, man, that Instagram pop-up is annoying. The other thing that we've run into a little bit of, not an issue, but like, Ice Yarn ships out of Turkey, and so the shipping is about 50% of whatever our buying cost. So you can see I've got like $100 worth of stuff in a cart that I haven't pulled the trigger on yet. But it's so much yarn. It's 8 items, 4 items, like, there's like 100 balls of yarn in this order. So yeah, the Instagram pop-up's rough.
What is under mixed lot?
Let's see if I can get it before it goes. Mixed lot of fancy yarn, of chenille yarn. I don't know. They're just whatever random garbage they scrounged up. Like, I don't know if you get a better picture. Yeah, so it's 2 kilograms of yarn. 2 kilograms is about 5 pounds of yarn. But like, if you owned a yarn store, or like if you did charitable knitting or something like that, and you just wanted to make, like, you couldn't really spend your money any better than this. Just go on here and just buy 5 pounds of whatever for $20. Problem that you run into is then you have to pay probably another $20 or $30 in shipping to ship $5 pounds of yarn.
The suspicious thing is, this looks like such a great deal.
Yeah.
How come we don't ever see ice yarn in small yarn stores?
I have in some, not very many.
No, but
yeah.
When I look at this, I think if I owned a yarn store, I would be buying this stuff for sure.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem that common.
So what my husband's saying is, it seems odd that we don't see more ice yarns. We've been to a lot of yarn stores, and it seems weird that we don't see more of it. And I don't know if it's just because it's not a very popular brand in the US, or why we don't see more of it. But with the margins seemingly as large as they could be on this yarn, like if you owned a yarn store and you wanted to stock baby merino in every color on the rainbow, these are 99 cents a piece. So even if you sold them for
50-gram balls of merino for 99 cents.
Yeah, so they're 50-gram balls. You get them for 99 cents. Number one, if you wanted to make like an adult sweater out of fine weight merino, like, it's a really, really easy way to go about it. Yeah. But if you owned a yarn store, like, getting 8 balls of yarn for 99 cents a piece, and then if you could turn them around and sell them for $4 a piece, it's pretty good margin on a single ball of yarn. So it is a little bit odd that we don't see more of it. But it seems to be getting more popular because more and more people have been asking to see ice yarns. So I don't know if they're just growing in, like maybe they only offered a few yarns previously. I don't really know the history of this company. And now they're just like exploding in popularity, or what the deal is. Or maybe just a whole bunch of people realize that they could get bags and bags of yarn from the internet for less than they were spending on their shopping trip to Joann Fabric.
What's the fanciest yarn you can find on
The fanciest
there? Like, is
yarn.
there a 100% BFL or?
Okay, so you're talking fiber type. So here's all of the yarns.
I was just wondering what would be like the fanciest one to try to figure out what the kind of the ceiling is.
Yeah, here's their luxury premium yarns. So they've got a baby alpaca. That's usually a pretty expensive yarn. So it's 45% extra fine super wash merino and 55% baby alpaca, and they are $3.99 a ball for 50-gram ball. That's like 50% off Hobby Lobby price in that ballpark. So I would say that those probably are like I said, a 50% markdown of a similar yarn at Hobby Lobby. So I don't know the quality on that, but it looks nice, at least in the ball there. This reminds me a little bit of those yarns from Lithuania that we saw. So there's every year we go to, what is that, Stitches Midwest in Schaumburg. There's a company there called Rainbow Yarns, and it's a Lithuanian company that just sells a handful of yarns. She's got a linen and merino, and I think there's a base acrylic, or like an acrylic yarn, and maybe a couple cottons. And it's like maybe 6 different lines of yarn. And they've all been nice quality, but they're just, I don't want to say weird yarns, but they're not a particular brand that I've ever even heard of. And they're just sort of like their own little house brand of kind of, I don't know, what do I want to say? Just generic, like workhorse quality. They're not amazing, but they are good prices. And so we've bought from there pretty much every year. The lady's very nice. And they've been nice yarns. I've used them for several projects, but they're just different in the US. And so I wonder if Ice Yarns has got kind of the same dynamic around here, which is just they're perfectly fine. They're perfectly competitive with everything that we sell, or not what we sell, but everything that's sold in our big box store. So like they would perfectly compete with the stuff at Hobby Lobby or Joann Fabric or Michaels. They're just not common to us. So what I'd like to do is get some ordered and figure out, you know, how good these yarns are and if they're worth the trouble of importing, or if you should just stick with what's available domestically easy. So I'd like to order a handful of them. There's, what is the one we've been really interested in?
Rockstar?
Yeah, Rockstar. I don't know where that one's at. Rockstar Metallic? That's a different Rockstar yet. We haven't even seen that one. This one looks more like that, there's Rockstar Color. Where's regular Rockstar? Rockstar Color. Oh, all these are brand new. See, this is the problem with this website is I was on here like 3 weeks ago. I put some of this in the yarn or in my cart, but there were only like 4 colors on here. And now there's like 6 more colors that I'd like to get. Like I really like this one. I really like this one. I kind of like this red, white, and blue looking one here. But I think literally the last time I looked, there were just these three colors on the bottom. So all of these, like this lilac and yellow is really cool. But like, is it cool enough to get 8 of them? I don't know. And then it's $8.99 for an entire bag. So then you're back to, well, it's almost like the cost of 8 of them is only like $1 more than if I just bought one ball of something else in the US. And if I buy ice yarns in the US, like from Amazon, they're between $8 and $12 per ball. So I'm not going to do that. So,
You should look up tiramisu.
tiramisu
Just search for tiramisu.
on ice yarns. It's a cashmere. So it's a sock weight merino cashmere and elite polyester. It's got a very weird texture to it, but wow, is that a heck of a deal. So a merino cashmere, probably elite polyester is probably a substitute for nylon. And it's $20 for 10 balls. They are only 30 grams a piece. But $1.99 for 30 grams, so you're looking at $6 per 100 grams, basically. I'm a little bit concerned with the fact that it's saying that 30 grams gets you 360 meters. Because that's well into the lace weight. Because 100 grams for 500 meters is about fingering weight. And so 450, 500, 360 for 30 grams, you're going to be at 1,000 meters per 100 grams, something in that ballpark, even higher than that. Actually, my math's a little low. You're going to be well into the lace weight, but it does look like a really, really good deal. Because for 10 of them, you're still getting 300 grams for $20. So, yeah, it's a really good deal. I really like the cashmere and dark navy is really pretty. So, let's see. Crochet Blessings is a question. All right. So, asking if anyone will sell Stitch Studio by Nicole after AC Moore closes. So, I know Michaels was in negotiation with AC Moore to buy a bunch of their stores and reopen them as Michaels, assuming that they weren't so close to a Michaels that they didn't want to do that. So, they were going to buy, like, I don't know, 40 of the stores or something like that and open Michaels in them. In that negotiation, they were supposed to also be buying all of their intellectual property. So that would be all of Stitch Studio by Nicole and all of their like not proprietary, but like their house brands for all of their lines. So Stitch Studio is obviously a AC Moore brand yarn, but I'm sure AC Moore has other things that they sell. I've never been in an AC Moore because they're an East Coast brand. Or an East Coast store. There's none in the Midwest, but I'm sure like they have their own paper products and paint and all of that, all the other craft stuff. And so Michaels was trying to buy all of that from AC Moore. I don't know where that landed. Right after they announced that they were closing, that was what was said. But I have no update. I think they were filing bankruptcy, so there's probably like a whole lot of things that have to wash out of that because if they sell their intellectual property, then that's like value, you know what I mean? Like they're selling off assets. And so then they have to, pay debts or whatever, however bankruptcy works. But the end result is I have not heard anything more, but supposedly Michaels was trying to buy that ability to continue to sell the Stitch Studio by Nicole and all of their other house brands. So, I guess just keep your eyes peeled. In the meantime, there's probably like Facebook groups and Ravelry groups that you can get.
Yeah, I'm on the AC
Um,
More Facebook page, and there are AC More people responding to questions about which brands are going to be whatever.
okay, so my husband said on AC Moore's Facebook page, AC Moore like representatives have been responding and saying like which brands are going to be picked up and where they might be available in the future.
So far,
So
I'm seeing
he
that nothing is available, but
okay.
I would ask on there.
So he said so far it doesn't look like anything has been uh they like where they haven't responded. Yeah, they haven't responded positively. But yeah, check there. New Day Crochet said hello and goodbye. So thank you for joining us, even if it was brief. Hopefully we'll see you next week. All right. So ice yarn seems to be the highest priority. So I'm gonna go through ice yarns again and try and choose carefully on which ones I'm going to order. Like I said, I have a bad habit of just putting everything in my cart and then wanting to spend, it easily becomes $100 into $200. Just because there's so many nice colors and so many different lines of yarn on here. And like I said, since the last time I was on here, there's been a whole bunch of colors added to some of the yarns that I was looking at. So I kind of like this where they have it broken down. So these are their fall winter yarns, and then they have spring summer yarns down here. And they've got baby yarns. And they just call these basic plain yarn, which don't look particularly basic and plain, if I'm being honest. Like, this soft air tweed doesn't look particularly plain. What's that? No idea. Is that? I don't know. I'm not familiar with that one. How do you even spell it? What's it in? Dralon. Sounds synthetic. It's in the alpaca jeans yarn. Yeah. 30% alpaca, 70% Dralon. You'd have to Google it. I have no idea. Looks fuzzy, but that's definitely the alpaca. Sounds synthetic, but like nylon, like, you know what I mean? So rayon, though rayon's semi-synthetic. Yeah. So anybody have anything that they're let's see real quick. Okay. Yeah. Anybody who's used ice yarns who's watching, is there one that you would really recommend? There's one that you really hated and would recommend we stay away from. There's literally 200 or 300 different lines of yarn here. So any advice that anyone who's used them, or anybody who's really interested in using a particular one, and would like to see it, I'd love to hear that as well. I did get a really nice Ravelry comment from somebody recommending trying Universe and Rockstar and one other yarn. And so I do have all of those in the cart, because somebody did reach out to me and strongly recommended those particular ones. I don't remember the other one offhand. I could look in the cart, I guess, and see what's in there. Universe, Rockstar. Oh, and I think it was this Alpaca Active, which looked like a nice yarn. I really like this color here, this burgundy and orange and pink. So, but then there's also this really pretty, like purples and olives color. So it's tough call. It would be really nice if you could get 4 for $9.99 and you could pick 4 colors, but I know why they're not doing that. They're selling it in bulk, basically. Recommendation on Fantasia. Let's try that one. Okay, that looks like an interesting yarn. This actually looks very much like, what is that yarn that I just worked with? The one I made the hat out of. Shimmery. Which looks exactly like Scarfy. So Lion Brand makes a yarn called Shimmery. And then Shimmery looks exactly like Lion Brand's Scarfy with sparkle mixed in. And actually, that's the yarn I was trying to come up with earlier when we were looking at Hobby. That yarn on the front page. This one, this Universe Hobby, looks exactly like Shimmery. It just comes in better colors. But this Ice Yarns Fantasia looks very similar to Scarfy, just on first glance here. And if it comes in a shimmer version, it looks exactly like Shimmery as well. But I will take a look around and see what colors Fantasia comes in, and I will give it a try. Thank you for the recommendation. That helps, just trying to narrow down from thousands and thousands of options to a few that we can get on order and open up for you guys. So I know there's been a lot of interest on ice yarns. So Queen, I'm having a hard time reading the other one, Nadira, maybe, says that she worked with it and it's similar to Scarfy but less yardage. Scarfy comes in gigantic balls, if I remember correctly. Lion Brand, where is, not the Ravelry listing. If I remember correctly, it comes in, it's 150 gram balls, 312 yards, and these probably come in 100 gram balls, and are 190, 207. That's almost dead on the same weight. And there's 78% wool, or 78% acrylic, 22% wool, and Fantasia is 75% acrylic, 25% wool. So they're about as close to each other as you could get. Might be fun to grab a ball of Scarfy and a ball of Ice Yarns Fantasia and a ball of Shimmery and sort of do a combo review of all three kind of at the same time. So here's what you can get, domestically in the US. Here's what you can get around the world, and how they're similar to each other. I don't know if there's a country of origin on here. Most of Lion Brand's yarns seem to be made in Turkey, which is where Ice Yarns is out of, though, to be fair, most yarn comes from Turkey. Like, if you actually look at, acrylic yarns, a ton of it comes out of Turkey. There must just be a huge textile industry in Turkey. And so I'm not surprised that, a lot of the same things, that there's every chance that they all came out of a very similar mill. And a lot of cases, probably the same mill. I'm trying to remember, there was a yarn that I saw. It was when Mandala was really popular. There was a yarn that became available, and it was almost exactly the same yarn. It was the same colors. They were both from Turkey. They had the exact same fiber content. They were the exact same yardage. And it was pretty clear that it was one yarn got sold to Lion Brand and the exact same yarn got sold to another company, and they were just selling the same yarn for the roughly the same price. But the difference was that it was at the time when Mandala like first released, and like you could not get it. When they first released it, they released it only with Walmart, and it was like a limited release where like just a few Walmarts got it and it sold out. And I remember it being kind of like a big deal. And then I saw this other yarn and I was like, it's almost exactly the same yarn, just like by eye. So, but yeah, if you look at this white and gray version of Fantasia and then the white and gray version of Scarfy, they're pretty similar in look. So I'd be curious to just see like how they work up. And in this case, Scarfy sells for, I don't know, let's see what Love Netting has it selling for. $9.99 for a 150 gram ball. And for $9.99, well, for $7.99, you can get 400 grams over here in 4 separate balls. So if shipping wasn't real expensive, or if you were already going to be buying a bunch, it's a better deal to get it from Ice Yarns, assuming that they're equivalent or close enough for the project you're working on. So, yeah, I will take a look around. I'm going to prioritize Ice Yarns. Tracy says she's bought Picasso from Ice Yarns and hasn't used it yet, but it looks nice. Let's see Picasso. Picasso wool in salmon, or in white green, or in white and black. They all look pretty nice. 55% wool, 45% acrylic. It's a number 4 worsted weight yarn, so it looks like a pretty nice yarn. I like when there's a little bit of wool in a yarn. Makes it a little bit nicer to like block. Acrylic will block, but this single ply like roving style acrylic tends not to block great. And gets a little bit like crunchy on you. So having a little bit of wool in there really helps that out. But you can see here, Oh, I didn't realize either. Sorry, I've been talking. I didn't even look up. So hopefully you can see this now. This is the Picasso yarn here. And you can see it's like a roving style yarn. But what I was saying is when you get a little bit of wool in there, it usually blocks a little nicer. So this is a really interesting, they have this picture in every one of their yarns so you can like see it laid out on a knitting needle. It's just a very like different style picture. It's useful. You can sort of see it against another yarn. And a lot of times you don't get to see a single strand of yarn. So in the case of like an art yarn, if we go back to the categories and we go to these eyelash yarns, sometimes you don't really know what they look like when you lay them out. And so it's kind of nice to see what you're getting pulled out, like, and just look at the fiber. Because sometimes you can't tell if it's like a whole round thing or if it's going to be more like an eyelash where you've got like a backbone and then there's like fuzz hanging off of it. So like this puffy yarn, you can tell it's like a whole round tube. Kind of looks like they took this picture for every single yarn. They did. That's devotion there. So for every single colorway, they've got it laid out with a needle too. So, but you can see that this one's more of a round chenille and not an eyelash yarn, even though it's under eyelash yarns. Where this is definitely an eyelash yarn with that like backbone and then the lashes. off the backbone there. So, all right. Well, that helps me a little bit. There's a couple suggestions. Queen Nadira is also saying Roma. I saw that one when I was looking through here. Roma looks really pretty. Comes in like these nice pastel colors that I like. It's a DK weight and it's 74% modal, 26% wool. Modal is not something I've seen much in yarns on, just in knitting and crochet yarns. Modal is a cellulosic yarn, meaning that it came from cellulose broken all the way down. I think modal comes specifically from some kind of tree, if I remember correctly. Rayon comes from bamboo, typically. Tencel is wood pulp. I think modal comes from some very specific tree. We could look it up, but it really generally is very, very soft. Anybody who's handled Tencel should generally know modal's about the same feel to it. It's really, really smooth. It says right up here, it is derived from beech trees. So modal specifically is cellulose from beech trees. Where there's other types that can come from other sources of cellulose. But it's a very, very soft, silky fiber. And it's also blended with 26% wool. Modal has a tendency to pill. You can get like sheets made out of modal. And they're very, very soft and silky. You can get t-shirts as well made out of modal. But it does have a tendency to pill. So, that would be my only worry there. And this is not a chainette style yarn. It doesn't look like it's a spun yarn. So that's not going to help. Well, actually it might be chainette now that I'm looking. Yeah, it is a chainette. So that should help. So I would definitely prefer a chainette style on modal because it'll help. So, yeah, I'm probably gonna get some of that. I like modal quite a bit. So, all right. Well, bunch of people said beech trees, and I was looking down there. So, thank you for that. There's a whole bunch of those cellulosics that all have very specific requirements and different treatments, but they're all generally sort of the same thing. At least like in hand feel. So, modal, Tencel, rayon, all generally feel very similar. They have variations and differences, but you can tell that they have that smooth, silky texture. I have a yarn that's 100% Tencel somewhere in a box, and it's basically a liquid. Like, it just flows through your hands, and it's cold to the touch, and it's really just the coolest fiber to feel. And I don't know what I want to do with it, because it, like I said, it has no structure almost to it, and it just like flows. It's gonna make the weirdest shawl or cowl or something out of it at some point, but it's very cool. So I think I'm probably gonna wrap up for the evening. Well, we started on hobby and then we moved over to ice yarns because that's what people were interested in. So maybe we'll do more of this next week. I don't have a specific plan for next week yet either. But yeah, maybe we'll do this, maybe some more of this. If anyone has other suggestions for next week, I'd love to hear those as well. But I think I'm probably going to wrap up. When we started this, I told my husband, I'm not sure if I'm going to stream real long, and then stream 2 hours anyway. So, hopefully you guys enjoyed it and I wasn't too sleepy looking or repetitive. I'm pretty ready for bed. Normally I'm up a bit later, but I got up early this morning, so I'm ready to call it quits for the evening. I thank everyone for joining us. It's been fun, a lot of chat in the live chat and questions back and forth. So hopefully, it was fun for you guys as well. Um, and I will get some ice yarns on order. If anyone has any suggestions about hobbyum, the sheep's yarn, or any of the other brands. Wool Warehouse has a number of brands that I don't have firsthand experience with. So if there's something on Wool Warehouse that looks very intriguing to you guys, I'd love to hear what you'd like to see out of those yarns. So you can find me on Facebook or Instagram at Experiments in Crafting. You can always send me direct messages there. Or you can leave comments on the video. I think I'm all caught up on comments. There might be one or two new ones that came in since the weekend, but I try and keep on top of those. I'm just sometimes get a little bit behind. So send me a message wherever is most convenient for you, and I will try and answer it. And hopefully I will see you guys next week. We stream at 8 o'clock Central Time on Tuesday nights. So I've been pretty consistent at streaming on Tuesday nights. If we're gonna miss it, it'll be on Facebook, Instagram, or on the community tab of YouTube. So thank you again for joining me, and have a good rest of your week. Good night.